recording. Okay, I think, all right. Okay, so ask the question on the fear of death of the ego and whether it comes up spontaneously or not. If you're doing spiritual work and you're a student of enlightenment with teachers such as Ramana and David Hawkins, you realize that eventually what's required is the death of the ego, the death of the identity. And at that point, a huge terror arises that you never have your ego ever again. It'll be gone. So when you're doing spiritual work with that intention, that you're actually willing to surrender the ego for good, your identity, and it'll never ever come back. It will be dissolved into the light, never to regenerate your sense of identified self. Then as you do the spiritual work, eventually you'll get periods where enormous terror arises. Generally speaking, the terror arises, it could arise spontaneously, or it could arise in specific environments, like in front of a teacher or in a high spiritual environment. I know with one of the teachers I met who would talk about the death of the ego, students would often get this huge terror arising that they're going to lose their identity, their personality for good, and it would die and never come back. So that can occur in the presence of a teacher or in specific contexts, but it can also arise just through dedicated work. So with Ramana, it just arose spontaneously. However, I'd say if you could see his past lives, you'd probably see that he was working on it for a long time. So it was just due that the death of the ego would arise and he had the opportunity to transcend it. So it can be both. It can come up spontaneously. Now, if you have the intention for enlightenment, it will come up because you have to sacrifice your addiction to your personality, to your identity. For that, you think that's you think that's who you are. And you've been thinking that's who you are for many, many lifetimes. So that the idea of losing it and it will never come back, your idea of what you are, and for that to die, never to come, will come if you're a serious student of enlightenment. Of course, that terror of the death of the ego probably won't come if you're not serious, a serious student. So if it's coming up regularly, it's a good sign. It means you're getting the opportunity. So when it arises, if you feel appropriate, just allow it to arise and let it let the ego die. You know, it'll be as Hawkins described it, it's the most horrific death you'll ever experience, the dying of the personality. It's excruciating for a minute or two as your personality dissolves into the light, never to regenerate. But then it's done, and the infinite light replaces it, and you never have to suffer your ego again. So yeah, if you're a student of enlightenment, that is the end point. So to all those who seek enlightenment, I pray for miracles for you and for the courage and the willingness and the conviction to go through the illusion of the death of the ego to realize the true self.